Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. It was my 30th birthday. The day I used to imagine would be filled with warmth, candles, and laughter, not cold silence and vanishing footsteps. I woke up early like always, before the alarm, before the sunrise, before the house remembered I existed. The kitchen smelled of eggs and coffee, not because someone asked for it, but because I still believed in effort, in making a home, even if no one noticed. Daniel, my husband, came down the stairs in his usual crisp gray suit, the one he wore to impress clients, or maybe her. He didn't glance at the table I had carefully set for 3. He just took his travel mug, turned to leave, and called out, "Ethan, let's go." Our son came bounding down in his favorite red hoodie, the one I had stitched back together last week, when he tore it playing soccer. He didn't look at me either, just slid his backpack on, grinned up at his father and said, "Are we still getting her cake this year?" Her. They didn't say her name, but I didn't need them to. Lena. The woman Daniel had loved since high school. The woman who smiled through our wedding photos from the second row. The woman my son had started calling Auntie, like it was a compliment. I swallowed hard, then said the one thing I promised I wouldn't. "Can you two come home early tonight? Just dinner for my birthday." Daniel froze at the door, hand resting on the knob. He didn't turn to face me. "It's Lena's birthday too." Then they were gone. No happy birthday. No hug from Ethan. Not even a look. Just the soft click of the door, and the sound of the car pulling out of the driveway. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. I stood at the counter, staring at their untouched breakfast. At 10 a.m., I baked the cake I knew neither of them would eat. At 1 p.m., I picked up Ethan's favorite dumplings. At 3 p.m., I took out the gift I bought him, a signed football, one I had to call 5 stores to find. At 5 p.m., I laid the table. 3 plates, silver napkins, the good china from my grandmother's cabinet. At 7 p.m., I lit the candles. Just 2. One for Ethan. One for Daniel. Mine didn't need lighting. It was already burned out. By 9 p.m., the food had gone cold. The cake had sunk in the middle. The gift sat unopened. I called. Once. Twice. Voicemail. On the 3rd try, Daniel answered. He didn't say hello. Just, "What do you want?" Behind him, I could hear laughter. Glasses clinking. Music playing softly. Ethan's voice came through, high-pitched and excited. "Aunt Lena, can I blow out the candles with you?" Then Lena's voice, sweet and sickening. "Of course, sweetheart. You're my little birthday boy too." I froze. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I just wanted to say, Grandma would have wanted us to eat together tonight. That was the only excuse I had left. Invoking someone who wasn't even alive anymore. Daniel laughed dryly. "Claire, don't start this. Not tonight. Not tonight." I repeated. My voice was hollow. "You mean not on her birthday?" "Don't do this," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." But there was no tomorrow. Not anymore. Not for me. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked to the fridge, packed the cold dumplings into containers, and placed the cake in a box. Then I walked upstairs, pulled my suitcase from the back of the closet, and started packing. Not because I had a plan. Not because I was brave. But because staying had become more painful than leaving. The last thing I folded was Ethan's baby blanket, the one he used to drag around the house when he was 3. I held it to my chest for a moment. It smelled like laundry soap, and a childhood I no longer belonged to. At midnight, I left the house. As I locked the door behind me, I whispered to no one, "Happy birthday, Claire." And this time, I didn't wait for anyone to say it back. The airport smelled like coffee and goodbye. I sat by the window, gate 14B, watching planes rise into the foggy night. Around me, strangers huddled in blankets, tapped away on their phones, or leaned against shoulder bags and nodded off. I was neither sleeping nor awake, just hovering somewhere between. My phone buzzed. "Daniel." Again. I didn't answer. I'd already said what mattered. I looked out the glass again, and remembered something Grandma once said while pouring tea. When a woman gets quiet, it means she's already left. The flight boarded slowly. I was the last to get on. Even the stewardess looked surprised. "Final call for Mrs. Claire Richards." "Yes," I whispered. That's me. As the plane climbed through the night sky, I finally played the voicemail Daniel had left an hour earlier. You're being dramatic. Ethan's confused. You want to blow up our whole life because I missed dinner. I hit delete. Then another came in. From Ethan. Mom, where are you? I wanted you to see my drawing. It's for you. Happy birthday. He sounded tired. Not sorry. Just tired. I watched the message twice. Then shut my phone off. And for the first time in years, the world went silent. I arrived at the old city by dawn. A quiet place with cracked sidewalks and soft rain, hitting the tin roof of the taxi. Grandma's house sat still and undisturbed at the edge of town, just like I remembered. I opened the door with the spare key she always left under the doormat. The inside smelled of lavender and books. Her photo sat atop the mantel, framed in brass, watching me like she had been expecting this moment. On the hallway table, next to the bowl of old pennies and sewing needles, was her last gift to me, a sealed letter. I had taken it at the funeral, but never dared read it. But now in the silence, I unfolded the paper and let her voice return. Claire, you are more than what they made you. You are not just a wife. Not just a mother. You are not disposable. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I didn't even know I was crying until one drop hit the paper. One day, they will realize you were the glue. And by then, you'll be too far away for them to catch. I spent that evening making tea just like she used to. 1 spoon of honey, a slice of lemon, no sugar. Then I went to the old back room, the one filled with her fabric scraps, and opened the chest that had once held her quilting squares. Inside were my childhood sketchbooks, crumpled, dusty, but still mine. Next to them was the box of pastels she had saved up to buy me when I was 15. I remember the way she smiled handing it over, whispering, "Make something the world can't ignore." I took them to the window, set up a canvas, and just sat. I hadn't painted in years. Not since Daniel rolled his eyes at my hobby and called it a waste of time. But now, with the sky turning soft orange outside and the memory of Grandma behind me, I dipped the first brush in yellow. It was shaky, like my hands had forgotten joy. But with every stroke I felt something thaw, something come alive again. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. Not yet. Instead, I painted. Because sometimes the only way to remember who you are is to start where you left yourself behind. The next morning, I walked through Grandma's garden. Dew still clung to the petals of the wild roses she'd planted decades ago. Each bloom reminded me of her, soft but resilient, fragrant even in the cold. Inside, I made toast I didn't eat, brewed tea I didn't finish, and checked my phone for the first time in 24 hours. 27 missed calls, 13 voicemails, 5 messages from Daniel, 1 from Ethan. It was a video. I hesitated before pressing play. The screen lit up with a party scene, streamers, cake, glittery decorations. Lena's voice giggled in the background, sweet and polished. "Ethan, blow out the candles with me." My son's face appeared. He looked happy. Genuinely, freely, effortlessly happy. He leaned in and kissed Lena on the cheek. "Happy birthday, Aunt Lena. I love you." She laughed, cupped his face gently, and whispered, "I love you too, baby." Daniel was in the background, arms crossed, smiling faintly. I paused the video right there. My chest felt tight. Not because they were celebrating without me. That had happened before. But because in Ethan's smile, I saw her. Not just in the way he hugged her, but in the way he didn't even look for me. I deleted the video. Later that afternoon, I walked into town to pick up groceries. Nothing special, just a few eggs, milk, bread. But even the act of carrying that brown paper bag back down the cracked sidewalk felt new. Free. I passed a local gallery. Inside, students were hanging paintings for a weekend show. One piece stopped me. A watercolor of a faceless woman holding a child who was looking away. I stood there longer than I should have. The gallery owner came out, smiled warmly. "Beautiful piece, isn't it? It's called Invisible Mothers." I blinked away the sting in my eyes. "It's perfect," I said. That evening, I pulled out one of my unfinished canvases. It was an old painting, one I had started 5 years ago and never completed. It showed a little boy sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken crayons. I had started it after Ethan's 3rd birthday, The year Daniel forgot to come home. Back then, I told myself I didn't finish it because life got busy. But now I saw the truth. I didn't finish it because I didn't want to paint what came next. The part where the boy learned not to wait. The part where the mother put the crayons away. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Daniel. Claire, I don't know what you want. I said I was sorry. You just vanished. Do you really think this helps anyone? Delete. Then one from Ethan. Mom, I wanted to give you something. I drew you a picture. You were blowing out the candles this time. Pause. Replay. Tears. I couldn't stop the ache. Because children don't lie, not like adults do. Their truth is raw, confusing, and painfully pure. I opened my bag, pulled out a blank canvas. And this time, I painted the cake. 3 candles. 1 slice missing. And a woman smiling alone. Because sometimes loving yourself means celebrating alone. And not saving a slice for the ones who never showed up. 2 weeks passed. I didn't mark the days. They marked themselves, one quiet sunrise at a time. Each morning, I followed the same pattern: tea, toast, paint, walk. And for once, the routine didn't feel like survival. It felt like recovery. One cloudy afternoon, while sorting old boxes in Grandma's attic, I found a folded blanket. It was faded and thin. One of the first I ever swaddled Ethan in. I sat on the floor, clutching it to my chest. It still smelled faintly of baby lotion and the softer parts of motherhood. That night, a storm rolled in. Heavy winds shook the windows. The lights flickered twice and went out. I lit candles, sat by the fireplace, watched the flame rise and fall like breath. Then a knock. 3 sharp taps, followed by silence. I froze. No one ever came here unannounced. I opened the door. Ethan stood there, soaked from the rain, backpack slung over one shoulder, water dripping from his bangs. Behind him, Daniel, dry, distant, quiet. Hi, Mom, Ethan whispered. Why are you here? I asked, eyes on Daniel. He wanted to come, Daniel replied. I didn't argue. I stepped aside. Inside, Ethan shivered near the fire. I wrapped the old blanket around him. He looked smaller than I remembered. I thought you'd be mad, he said. I am, I replied gently. But I'm glad you came anyway. He looked up surprised. You are? I nodded. You're still my son. He smiled faintly and laid his head on my lap. Daniel stayed in the doorway, as if he didn't know where he belonged anymore. Claire, he started. But I held up a hand. Let him sleep. That's all I care about right now. The next morning, I made porridge, the same kind Ethan always liked when he was sick. Soft. Simple. No salt. He devoured it. Said nothing. I didn't need him to. Daniel lingered by the door again. He hasn't eaten like that in days, he said. Lena tried. But he trailed off. I didn't respond. He stepped forward, looking around the house. It's so you, he said. Yes, I said. It's the first place in years that is. He nodded slowly. You look alive. I met his eyes. I am. Finally. He swallowed hard. I didn't know how far I pushed you. You didn't push, I corrected. You erased. He said nothing. I handed him a folded towel and pointed toward the guest room. You're welcome to stay tonight. But after that, you leave. Understood, he said. Thank you. But I didn't do it for him. I did it for Ethan. For the child who deserved at least one peaceful sleep in the middle of the storm his parents had made. That night, I sat by the fire again. Ethan asleep beside me, blanket rising and falling with each breath. Daniel watching quietly from the hallway. And for the first time, I didn't wonder if I'd gone too far. I didn't question my silence. I didn't ache for their approval. I just breathed. And it felt enough. The next morning was bright and still. No wind. No sound. Just the kind of silence that wraps around you like a soft blanket. Ethan was still asleep when I brewed tea. Daniel stood in the doorway of the guest room, arms folded, watching me cautiously. He didn't speak until I placed a second mug on the table. For you, I said flatly. But don't mistake this for comfort. He nodded. I won't. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he cleared his throat. Claire, I never expected you to leave. That's the problem, I said. You never expected me to do anything. Not leave. Not feel. Not stop. His gaze fell to the table. I didn't know how much I'd taken from you. You didn't take, I corrected. You ignored. You watched me give until there was nothing left, and then blamed me for being empty. Daniel said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Ethan emerged mid-morning, rubbing sleep from his eyes, holding that old blanket like it still offered safety. He gave me a soft smile. Is it okay if I stay another night? I ruffled his hair. You don't have to ask. That afternoon, we walked to town together, Ethan and me. Daniel didn't come. We passed the bookstore Grandma loved. Ethan pulled me inside. He picked out a novel and a set of colored pencils. For you, he said. So you can keep drawing. I blinked, taken aback. He'd never bought me a gift before. Not really. That had always been Daniel's job. Expensive jewelry. Things I didn't need. Things he forgot to wrap. But this? A $10 pack of pencils and a paperback mystery novel? It was more than enough. Back home, Ethan drew at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner. I glanced at his sketchpad. He had drawn me again. But this time I was smiling. That night, we ate together by candlelight. 3 plates. 3 chairs. Daniel joined us, but didn't speak unless spoken to. He watched quietly, like a guest who didn't know if he'd be invited back. After dinner, Ethan washed the dishes. Daniel followed me out onto the porch. He handed me a small box. What is this? I asked. Your birthday gift, he said. I meant to give it to you weeks ago. I opened it slowly. A necklace. Simple. Elegant. I had seen this same necklace before, around Lena's neck. Did she give it back? I asked coldly. He flinched. It was never hers. I bought it for you. She found it early and assumed. Of course she did, I said, voice sharp. You let her assume a lot of things. He stepped forward. I know I've hurt you. I know I don't deserve anything. But I'm asking anyway. For what? I asked. To start again. I stared at him. The man I once loved. The man I once begged to love me back. Now, he looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. He was finally the one shrinking in my presence. And that was all the closure I needed. I'm not starting over, I said gently. I'm starting fresh. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in Grandma's old chair, her quilt across my lap, the necklace still in the box beside me. I didn't need it. I didn't need him. I didn't even need this moment. But I took it anyway, not for forgiveness, not for reconciliation, but for acknowledgement. He saw what he lost, and I saw what I gained. The next week blurred into a rhythm I didn't expect. Daniel lingered longer than I liked. Ethan asked fewer questions than I feared. There was a strange stillness to our days, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for someone to speak first. But I didn't know anyone the first word anymore. On Thursday, I returned to teaching at the local community center. It was a humble building with faded paint and creaky floors, but the children loved it. And I loved them for making noise in a life that had gone quiet for too long. I was halfway through a coloring activity when Ethan walked through the door. Can I help? He asked. I nodded and handed him a stack of blank sheets. He moved from table to table, helping younger kids draw flowers and trees. He looked peaceful, different. Not the boy who once rolled his eyes at my food or recoiled when I hugged him. Later, one of the younger girls tugged my sleeve. Miss Claire, who's that boy? That's Ethan, I said. He's helping today. Is he your son? She asked. I paused. Ethan was listening. He had stopped drawing. His eyes locked onto mine, nervous, waiting, almost hopeful. I took a breath. Yes, I said. He is. And just like that, his face softened. Not a smile. Not yet. But something warmer. Something like relief. That evening, Ethan stayed late to help me clean up. As we stacked chairs and wiped tables, he asked, "Why didn't you tell them you left?" I turned to him. Left what? Me. Dad. The house. Everything. I took my time answering. Because I didn't leave you, Ethan. I left the version of myself no one wanted to see. He frowned. But I thought you didn't want me anymore. My throat tightened. I always wanted you. I just stopped chasing people who didn't want me back. He was quiet. Then he nodded slowly, like he understood more than a child should have to. We walked home in silence. The sunset painted the street gold, and for the first time in a long time our footsteps matched. When we reached Grandma's front porch, Ethan stopped me. I need to ask something. Okay. He hesitated. There's a parent-teacher meeting next week. Dad says he's too busy. And I asked, will you come? I looked at him. Not just at his face but into it. Into the boy who once pushed me away, called me boring, said I embarrassed him. And now he was asking me to show up. I'll be there, I said. He grinned, not a full smile but a half one, the kind that said maybe he was trying. And maybe I still had something to give. That night, I sat in the kitchen going through old paperwork when Daniel walked in. He looked tired, out of place. Ethan told me you're going to the school meeting, he said. I am. He nodded. He didn't ask me. He didn't need to. Daniel exhaled, defeated. He's changing. No, I said. He's remembering. Remembering what? What love looks like when it's not bought or bartered. Daniel stared at me for a long moment, then said, I think I'm losing him. You're not, I said calmly. You're just meeting the version of him I always saw. After he went to bed, I looked through my sketchbook. On the last page I drew Ethan, not as a boy lost between two parents, but as a child who had finally come home to himself. And this time I didn't label the drawing, because for once no title was needed. The next few days were uneventful on the surface. Daniel kept his distance but didn't leave. Ethan drifted between us, unsure of which way to lean. But tension lives in quiet rooms. And one night it cracked. I was brushing paint over a canvas when the doorbell rang. Daniel answered it. From my room, I heard Ethan's excited voice. Luis. I froze. Luis was the art teacher who ran the center with me. Kind, soft-spoken, good with kids. He had taught Ethan how to shade last week and offered him snacks after class. And now he stood at my front door holding an umbrella and 2 sketchbooks. I forgot to return these, he said, smiling. Ethan took the books and invited him inside without asking. Come in, Mom's painting. Daniel's silence was heavy. He followed Luis in with that look, the one that pretended not to care but soaked up every detail. Luis noticed. He smiled politely, then handed me a 3rd sketchbook. I didn't want this one to get ruined. Looks like your best work yet. Thank you, I said, accepting it. I was about to offer him tea when Daniel's voice cut the room. So this is why you won't come back? The air turned sharp. Luis shifted awkwardly. Excuse me, I asked. You've got your replacement already, Daniel said, walking toward the kitchen. No wonder you're so peaceful here. Luis held up his hands. I didn't mean to cause tension. I was just dropping these off. I nodded to Luis. It's fine. Thanks for stopping by. He glanced at me, silently asking if I was okay. I gave the smallest nod, and he left. The door clicked shut. I turned toward Daniel. He was standing by the table, fists clenched, chest tight. You've been gone 2 months and he's already playing house with my son? My voice stayed calm. He's not playing anything. He's being kind, something Ethan could use more of from his father. Daniel stepped forward. And you? You just let some stranger come in and take my place. I laughed bitterly. Take your place? You left it empty for years. He pointed at the door. That's what you want? A new man? A new story? Just erase what we had. What did we have? I snapped. A marriage you never honored? A child you emotionally abandoned? A wife you only touched when guilt outweighed shame? His face turned pale. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout. It just lands. Hard. I messed up, he whispered. But you didn't even try. I stepped closer. I tried every night I stayed. Every meal I cooked. Every silence I swallowed. But trying alone isn't love, Daniel. It's endurance. He sat down, stunned. Ethan peeked out from the hallway. Is everything okay? I knelt beside him. Yes, baby. Grown-ups are just figuring things out. He nodded, then reached for my hand. Felt like forgiveness. But not for Daniel. Later that night, I found Daniel sitting in the guest room, staring at the sketch Luis had returned. It was one I'd done of Ethan, cradled in a blanket, sleeping peacefully. I never saw him like this, Daniel said. Because you never looked, I replied. He turned to me slowly. Would you have ever left if I hadn't pushed you? I thought for a moment.
No.
I would have stayed. And died slowly. That's when he finally understood. Not just what he had lost, but what I had become. And from that moment on, he never raised his voice again. It rained that night. Not a drizzle, not a gentle patter, but a downpour. The kind of rain that drowns out noise and memory alike. I woke to the sound of it beating against the window. A flash of lightning lit the hallway. A shadow stood outside my door. Mom! Ethan's voice barely audible.
I'm scared.
I opened the door. He stood there barefoot, clutching his pillow. Can I sleep in here? I hesitated. Not because I didn't want him close, but because I didn't want to confuse him. This wasn't the old home. I wasn't the same mother. But then I saw the look in his eyes, wide, uncertain. The same look he used to give me when he was sick and I was the only one who knew how to soothe him. I stepped aside. He climbed into the bed quietly. I tucked him in and sat beside him. The rain tapped the roof in an angry rhythm. Thunder rolled far in the distance. Do you think it's always going to be like this? Ethan whispered. What do you mean? I asked. You and Dad, me in between. I looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering.
No.
One day it'll all make sense. But not yet. Right now you just sleep. He nodded and closed his eyes. And for a few minutes I believed that was enough. But the next morning something snapped. Daniel was in the kitchen, pacing, phone in hand. There's a problem at the company, he said as soon as I walked in. I have to go back. Now. I said nothing. He pointed toward Ethan's bedroom. He's staying here. I raised an eyebrow. You're leaving him? I don't have a choice. I folded my arms. You always have a choice. You just don't like the ones that require sacrifice. He glared. He'll be fine. You'll take care of him. And then he left.
No hug. No instructions. No goodbye.
Ethan came out an hour later, dressed and silent. I made him pancakes. He barely touched them. At noon, I walked to the school with him. It was time for the parent-teacher meeting. He didn't hold my hand, but he walked beside me. That was progress. The meeting was routine, grades, behavior, group activities. Near the end, one teacher leaned forward and said, Ethan's been different this month. Calmer. More focused. She smiled. It's good to have you back, Claire. Back. Such a simple word. And yet, I never felt further away from the person I used to be. That night, Ethan was unusually quiet. He sat on the porch while I cleaned up dinner. When I stepped outside, he looked up at me, tears silently falling.
I'm sorry, Mom.
My heart twisted. For what? For choosing her. For calling her Aunt Lena like she was special. You were the one who made me pancakes, who tucked me in, who fixed my stupid blanket. I knelt in front of him, brushing the hair from his eyes. You were a child. You were shown what to love. That's not your fault. But you left, he said. I had to. I was breaking Ethan. He nodded. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't want you to, I replied. Not then. Later that night, he curled up on the couch and fell asleep with his head in my lap. I watched the rain start again, slower this time. Soft. Cleansing. And I realized something. This storm didn't break us. It washed us clean. The next morning, the phone rang at dawn. It wasn't Daniel. It was his grandfather. His voice was shaky, full of worry. Claire, I heard there's been a landslide near the Western District. Ethan's there, right? With Daniel. I froze. I don't know. He coughed hard into the phone. He didn't tell me he left town. Is he okay? You're sure Ethan's not with him? That's when I knew. Daniel had lied to everyone, including his own grandfather. And that lie had just come undone. I hung up and called Daniel immediately. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. I threw on my coat and rushed outside. The storm had left the roads muddy and scattered with branches, but I pushed through. 20 minutes later, I reached the village clinic. A nurse was just locking the doors. I ran to her. Is there a man here, Daniel, and a boy named Ethan? She looked at me. Her eyes softened. They're inside. The boy's fine. The man, not so much. My knees buckled. I pushed through the door. Inside, Daniel lay on a stretcher, face pale, arm bandaged. He looked up, stunned. Claire, you came. I ignored him. Where's Ethan? He pointed weakly to the hallway. I ran and found him sitting on a bench, legs swinging, a juice box in hand. Mom, he cried. He ran into my arms.
I'm okay.
They said it was just a scratch for Dad. We were in the car, and a tree fell near us. I held him tight. I'm here now, I whispered. He pulled back. I knew you'd come. Back in the exam room, I helped the nurse change Daniel's bandage. He winced but stayed quiet. You're lucky, she said. A few more inches and that branch would have gone through your chest. He chuckled weakly. Maybe that would have fixed everything. I snapped. Don't say that. You don't get to play the martyr. The nurse quietly left. Daniel looked at me. I deserved that. I sat down.
No.
You deserved worse. But I've run out of anger. He nodded slowly. You were always stronger than me. I had to be. Silence. Then he said, I've filed the divorce papers. For real this time. Good. There's something else. He pulled out an envelope from the pocket of his jacket. Inside, a bank card. What is this? The money I tried to send you every year when you were gone. I stared at it. Why now? Because it's not guilt anymore. It's acknowledgement. I took the card and placed it on the table. I never used a penny of it. I know. You destroyed me, I said softly. He blinked hard. I did. We rode home in silence. Ethan sat between us, humming a song he'd learned at school. He didn't know that this was the last car ride we would take like this, all three of us. And that was okay. Because not all endings come with slamming doors. Some come with soft goodbyes. And cleaner hearts. We returned to Grandma's house quietly. Daniel said nothing as he helped carry Ethan's backpack inside. He stood in the doorway awkwardly, like someone visiting a life he no longer belonged to. Ethan ran to his room, humming softly as if nothing had happened. Children are strange like that. They adapt not because they want to, but because they don't know they have another choice. Daniel lingered. I'll go, he said. I just needed to see you one more time. I looked at him. He was no longer the man I had once waited for. No longer the one who held my hopes or my heartbreak. He was just someone I had survived. You'll find the papers signed on the hallway table, I said. Please don't contact me unless it's about Ethan. He nodded. His voice cracked. Claire. No, I cut in. There's nothing left to explain. He opened the door slowly. The wind blew in softly, carrying with it the scent of rain and old roses from the porch. He paused, then pulled something from his coat pocket. A journal. Mine. I found this, he said. You must have thrown it out. I read it. My throat tightened. That journal held everything. The nights I cried in the bathroom, the meals they never touched, the birthdays I spent alone. He looked down. I didn't know. I tried to tell you, I said. You just never listened. He stepped out into the fading light. Before he left, he turned once more. I hope one day, you paint something that makes you forget all of this. I didn't respond. I closed the door behind him. Gently. Cleanly. Without regret. Weeks passed. Then months. Ethan stayed every other weekend. Sometimes he brought me drawings. Sometimes he didn't say much at all. But every time he left, he hugged me tighter. Daniel sent fewer messages. Eventually, none at all. I painted. I slept with the windows open. I read mystery novels and made Grandma's tea with lemon. And for the first time in years, I didn't wait for someone to come home, as I already was. One evening as I walked through town, I passed the gallery again. A new piece hung in the window mine. It showed a woman at the edge of a cliff, wind in her hair, her hands open wide. Not falling. Not flying. Just standing tall. The title? Unclaimed. A man beside me stared at it quietly. She looks free, he said. She is, I replied. Later that night, Ethan curled up beside me on the porch. Mom, he said, do you think people ever really change? I thought about Daniel. About Lena. About myself. No, I said. But they can finally become who they always were. He nodded slowly, laying his head against my shoulder. The stars above blinked through the trees. We said nothing more. And I didn't need anything else. Because this time, I wasn't living in the cracks of someone else's story. I was writing my own. And I wasn't looking back.